There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you so much for tuning into this brand new interview right now. I have a special guest with me this time. This individual right here is very, 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 very famous in the independent wrestling scene. You might have seen him a couple of promotions over in Evolve and BTW Wrestling. There's so much that you have seen of this individual. He also just made an appearance on AEW Dark. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let me introduce you to the one and only Aaron Solow. How are you, my friend?
I am good, and thank you for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I'm actually interested in getting a conversation with you because I've seen your work over the years, and it's actually cool seeing your tag team work, and of course your recent appearance on Dark, which a lot of people are like, Aaron Solow, I know that name. Yeah. So I always start these interviews with a spitball or fireball question. So I believe we discussed about this earlier. Which one would you rather prefer, Star Wars or Star Trek?
That one's actually easy one, Star Wars for sure. Star Trek, I was never really into the original stuff. My dad watched both Star Wars and Star Trek. But the newer set of Star Trek movies, I really liked. But I just been following Star Wars since whenever they re-released the original ones. I think in '99. Yeah, my dad let me skip school, took me to the cinema over in San Bruno. If anybody from Bay Area is watching, might be familiar with San Bruno. But yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, of course, as a Star Wars fan myself, I respect that. I mean, I'm just curious though. Are you liking the new set of movies that are coming out, or are you always diehard of the prequels and the the original movies?
I like them all, to be honest. I wouldn't say I like the newer ones better, but I do think that they are just like they're there with the older ones. I'd say if the older ones are here, the newer ones are not far away from it.
Well, that's awesome. So I wanted to start out this interview with your beginnings, because obviously you've had a decorated career for, I believe, over 10 years at this point. You've been with over so many promotions in the past. So can you talk about what was the inspiration for you to become a professional wrestler?
Sure, yeah. Wrestling's been in my life forever, basically. Like my dad was a huge fan of it growing up, so he'd have it on the TV, and I'd be 3 or 4 years old. I don't even know what's on the TV, but he'd buy me the figures, and so ever since I can remember, I've had wrestling somehow involved in my life. But I didn't really get into it until WrestleMania 9.
Oh,
Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka, and I loved Tatanka. He had red hair, and I thought it was the coolest thing I ever seen. And then Rufio from Peter Pan also had red hair, and I think I just had I made the connection, and I just kind of had this fascination. And Tatanka was a character I got to see more and new things of with red hair all the time. So I just stayed watching wrestling until now.
Well, that's awesome, especially with a person like Tatanka. I mean, he's still going strong even after all these years. I mean, I remember when he faced off against The Miz, I want to say it was about 2005 or 2006 against, like I mentioned before, The Miz on SmackDown. I'm like, wow, he is still going strong.
Yeah. I mean, to my knowledge, obviously nobody's really doing anything currently, but my knowledge, he's still active. Yeah. And I got to meet him at I don't remember which Mania number it was, the most recent one that was in New Orleans. I met him at WrestleCon, so it was a really cool experience meeting him.
Well, that's awesome. And that was WrestleMania 34. Yeah. So you talked about your beginnings, about what inspired you to become a professional wrestler. I'm actually kind of curious because you've had some accolades in the independent wrestling promotions, of course, multi-time tag team champion, of course, all around the California area. So can you talk about what it kind of got you that motive going into the professional wrestling business? Was it more, I'm going to be a tag team wrestler, or was it just whatever I could get my foot in the door first?
So initially starting off, I really, I always wanted to be a wrestler, but I really only had a plan of ever having one match. So I wanted to do all the training, basically do all this work that took months at a time just to have one match, and then that was going to be the end of it. But I loved the match. probably wasn't very good looking back at it, but I loved fun. And I just kind of kept going on with it. And I never really had this like big plan if I'm going to be this or I'm going to, oh my God, phone, of like, I'm going to be this or I'm going to be that. So as far as like being a tag or a singles wrestler, just as it came along it just, whatever happened.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, especially with your career, you started off your career actually as an AEW tag team champion. So, what was that moment getting your first title like?
Actually, correction to that is BTW was the first tag title that I owned. Yeah, so Big Time Wrestling, which is in Newark, California. That's the promotion that I started training after going to Lance Storm School in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I was a tag team champion with a guy named Shane Cody at that promotion. And, it was cool at the time. It was really cool. And I was really pumped about it. But after like just experiencing like BTW, then I wanted more and just experience more. So like, as you mentioned, ACW, which was over in Florida, that I got the tag titles. It's kind of funny. I got the tag titles with Jason Cade there. I've had a total of 5 matches at ACW, and I'm a 3-time tag champion there. So
that's legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome, especially with, not only as a tag team specialist, but you also have, like you mentioned before, about the BTW heavyweight championship that you did get. So what was, do you have a preference of rather, tag team wrestling or as a single competitor?
No, I don't have a preference. I do like them both in their own like respective right. Like it's completely different. Like the way you would go about a singles match, totally different that you would do with a tag match. But something I do enjoy about tag wrestling is there's more people involved, so there's more things that can be done opposed to a singles match. So I love that. Like I just love getting creative with things and all that stuff. And FTR, I think, is the best at it. So, like, I love to watch them.
Smart man. So, speaking about tag team wrestling, you've done a lot of tag team wrestling, of course, along with Jason Cade. So, can you talk about that first tag team match that you've ever had? Was it something that was different, or was it something like, I could get used to this?
The first tag, so I've had many tag partners, and then as like on the independent, sometimes you'll just kind of have a match where you're partnered up with just somebody random for the night. Man, I could be wrong on this, but I do believe my first tag partner actually was Hardcore Holly. If he wasn't my first one, it's the first one that comes to mind. So that was like pretty nerve-wracking because I want to say, as far as having like being on shows, I'm maybe a year, maybe slightly less than a year in at this point. So first like big name I was working with, and it's Hardcore Holly, and if anybody remembers, like people like have like remember him for being a pretty badass dude. So I was pretty nervous, but he was really cool, really nice guy and everything, and I loved it. I loved tagging with him. I felt like I learned a lot in that match.
Well, that's awesome, especially being under the tutelage of Hardcore Holly. So I do want to go into the transition. That's not my voice. So I want to go into that transition, going from California, where your roots are, all the way to Florida and traveling around the world. So was that a hard transition, or was it more like
the first one was hard. So I actually went from California over to St. Louis. That was well, technically I trained in Calgary first, moved back to California, and then when I decided like I'm moving out of California for good or for quite some time, I moved to St. Louis, where I ended up training with Davey Richards and Kyle O'Reilly and Tony Kazina, and Bad Luck Fale, who's in Bullet Club, was actually over there as well doing his excursion. So that was a really tough move, like mentally and emotional wise, because at least when I went to Canada, there's an end date of when I was coming back. I was gone for 3 months. Like moving to St. Louis, I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I happened to meet a guy that went by the name of Darren Dean, we wrestled each other. He just kept talking about how he was going to move to St. Louis and train with Davey Richards. I didn't believe him at first. And then we stayed Facebook friends, and sure enough, there he is posting videos and stuff of him traveling and training. And I messaged him and I said, how do I get in that? And, two weeks to a month later, I was living in St. Louis. So it was a very spur of the moment thing.
Well, that's awesome, especially, as a professional wrestler, you're traveling all over the world. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing I did want to mention was that you also made appearances in WWE. So what was that like, getting those opportunities? And I believe there was a tag team match that you were even a part of on SmackDown.
Yeah. So I've had a handful of NXT ones. I was on 205 Live twice, and I was actually on Raw once. Never did SmackDown. I don't know. I might have done something where I was like Roman, that got beat up by Roman or something like that. Yeah. But as far as match wise, never had one on SmackDown. The first one I had was, God, I don't even remember who it was against. Oh, it was against Sean Spears, who was Ty Dillinger at the time, and Jason Jordan. So they were a very short-lived tag team, but I got to work with them, and it was really cool because I think Sean Spears is one of the most underrated guys going right now. And Jason Jordan he's awesome. Like, if you've seen his stuff with Chad Gable, they were such a great tag team. And it was like anything. I was nervous because it was the first time, but it was overall great experience. And, to bring up the one that you mentioned, I actually teamed with Ricky Starks, who we were tag partners for about 3 years. And we never officially broke up or anything. It's just I moved back to California. He stayed in Texas. And that one was really cool because we wrestled Revival, who's now known as FTR, which I just mentioned, I think is the best tag team ever. I don't think just in this day, I think ever.
Well, definitely agreed. I definitely agree with that. So one of the things I do want to mention as well, speaking about your stuff with WWE, you were actually an alternate for the Cruiserweight Classic. Can you talk about what that opportunity was like, even just getting a call saying, hey, you're an alternate, we have a huge opportunity for you with the Cruiserweight Classic?
Yeah, so it was really cool to see it and be a part of that. So what they had us alternates do, we were at the Performance Center for a week along with everybody else in the tournament. And we were what our names were, alternates. So we did everything that the people in the tournament did, with the exception, obviously, of having matches. So they filmed little vignettes of us, interviews, a photo shoot, some crazy thing where we stood on something that rotated us and they took photos. So we did all of it. But none of us alternates. Actually, that's not true. Ali was an alternate. I don't know if people know that Ali was an alternate, and he was chosen to take place in someone else. But the other, I believe there's 5 of us that weren't chosen. We were there for the first set of tapings, and then it was just kind of we'll let you know if we need you. But it was a cool experience just to see how everything operated and seeing the guys that were there, because I knew a good amount of them just from the independents and stuff. So it was awesome to see guys like Ali and TJP and just everybody that was in that tournament, be featured on the WWE stage.
Well, that's awesome, especially being a part of such an elite roster for the Cruiserweight Classic. And, of course, I always hold the Cruiserweight Classic to my heart because it's really a showcase of not just cruiserweights, but these athletes that could do more than just fly off the top rope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, it was awesome. I can't believe they haven't done another one.
Hey, WWE, if you're listening to this. But speaking about your career, about Aaron Solow, not only a tag team specialist and not only a world champion in his own right, but also he just made his debut on AEW Dark. So can you talk to us about what was it like getting that opportunity to face, I believe it was Sean Spears that you went one-on-one with?
Scorpio Sky.
Sky, excuse me.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great. AEW is a very, I'm so lucky to have experienced it, just because, I've been watching it and just kind of like, oh, here's a place I've never been that I would love to, maybe even if it's just one match. But obviously, like, you know, we all want more than one match. But I was just like, this place looks awesome. So when they told me that they were going to use me, I was like ecstatic about it. And then we found out about our match the day of. So when I saw that it was Scorpio Sky, I've been a fan of Scorpio Sky forever. So back to his WSX days, back to when he made a little cameo on Tosh.0.
Yeah.
I've known of him for quite some time. And yeah, I think nothing of but good things of Scorpio Sky. So like to be in there with him, it was awesome. That's exactly who I wanted to wrestle.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the match itself, once this comes out, it already has been in the past. Such a phenomenal match. I think it showcased, your wrestling abilities, which is phenomenal. I'm just saying right now.
Thank you.
And I think it was a well put together match. I think it was very, showcased not only Scorpio Sky, but hey, we got this Aaron Solow guy, TNT champion.
Yeah. I really enjoyed my time there, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that maybe I get to do something more with them in the future.
Yeah, well, currently I believe you are in Florida right now. And what was it like to kind of go from California all the way to Florida, especially in a time of uncertainty and masker everywhere?
Yeah. So with the whole pandemic and everything, I've been very at home. I've been probably one of the people that's like followed all the rules to a T. Like I haven't left the house. If I do, I'm wearing a mask. I haven't even stepped foot in a grocery store. I do the Whole Foods, either the delivery to the house or the curbside pickup stuff. So that's as much interaction as I've had with the outside world. So to go from that to traveling on a plane, like it was pretty nerve wracking, but it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think I got too hyped up in my head of, like I'm getting sick, I'm going to get sick. And, but I didn't, and everything the airports were pretty, not too many people were there. And once you got to the airport and everything, you saw it, you're like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. And then it was actually just a nice little, like, man, this kind of feels like a little dose of what it was before the whole pandemic started. So it was actually, I feel, very calming to my mood, if anything, because I've been super uptight of like, can't do this. And like, now I'm like, okay, there are a few things we can do as long as we're taking our precautions.
Yeah, especially in 2020. Hopefully it's over soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a great conversation with you. I really do appreciate you being on here. But the one question that I really wanted to ask was that out of the entire experience that you had with professional wrestling, what would be that one match that people go back and watch that match with Scorpio Sky and they're like, I want to see more of this guy? What would be that one match that you would recommend to those fans?
Well, right now it would be the Scorpio Sky match. I'm thinking like, man, like I was just thinking before we hopped on here, and I was like, I don't know what my favorite match is, but I really loved the one with Sky that we just had. So if anybody asks me that's never heard of me, never seen me, that's exactly where I'm going to direct them. But I guess the next coolest one would be the match I had at New Japan, which actually is in San Jose, where I'm living now, with Jushin Thunder Liger. I was actually his last tag partner in America before he went and did strictly Japan shows and retired.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Jushin Thunder Liger's legend himself.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy thing when they first told me that. I thought they were joking with me. And then when I saw the like graphic, I was like, "Oh crap! They're trusting this non-contracted guy with their legend that's retiring." So it was a pretty like crazy but very, very cool thing, and I was honored to do it.
Yeah, before we go, I forgot to mention about that, your New Japan experience. What was it like working for a worldwide company that is famous for creating and nurturing and just creating these stars, just like Hulk Hogan did back in the day? Or same thing goes with Jay White or anybody from the Bullet Club. Like, how is it like learning under that tutelage?
It was really cool. It was very, very different from what I was used to doing as far as going to schools or training camps like here in North America. So what it was I went to their affiliated dojo, which is the Fale Dojo over in Auckland, New Zealand. So when you do the dojo style training, man, like you hear about it and then you're just like, oh, I could do that. But once you're in it, like it's a whole nother monster, man. Like it's crazy because they're very big on respect and things like that. So like for example, like when I was training and did like camps or schools anywhere else, it would just be we were in the ring from this time to this time and we repeated as we went on, right? At the dojo, it was we would wake up at 8 a.m. We would clean. So we all had chores like that we all rotated doing. So we're cleaning the dojo every morning. Then from there, you have a few minutes to get ready. Then you would train from 9 to either 12 or 1 o'clock. And we did that 6 days a week. So it was like squats, running, everything. And then like push-ups. And then you get into the ring. So you're already like pretty gassed out by the time they're like, okay, go into the ring. And like, you know, I was one of those guys, I'll admit, I'll be like, oh, that's not too bad. And then once you're in it, oh man, it's rough. And then to do that for, you know, I did it for 3 months. You know, people that go to the Japan dojo do it for years. So it just gives me that much more respect for them.
Awesome. Well, once again, Aaron, I want to thank you for joining in this interview. For those who don't know, make sure you check out Aaron's stuff. Links will be in the description for all of his social media. Any match that you might have seen this guy, go check him out. Support the merch. Absolutely. Go and check out that match with Scorpio Sky. Definitely, I think, one of the best matches of his career. Was there anything that you want to plug? Any, 30-second highlight?
Nothing that really. I'll just plug my Twitter and Instagram. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it is at Aaron Solow, AARON_SOLOW. Instagram at AARON_SOLOW.
Well, that's awesome. Once again, Aaron, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. And until we meet again, my friends, I will see you guys in the next interview. Boom.
Thank you.
And end broadcast.